What's up, Scyushi Squad? We are back in more Trove Dino Tamer, and today we're going to be talking about the Dino Tamer. I'm kind of losing my voice because I will admit I am stockpiling recording because at the moment that you guys are watching this, I'm probably already a married man. I'm getting married October 1st, and so I'm trying to get a stockpile of recordings so that I can have these videos go up to you guys regularly while I take a week or two off. Now that said, those of you that are watching this in the future, this is all irrelevant, so just don't mind me. You know, I'm just proud of it. I'm just excited. But anyways, talking about the Dino Tamer, how does this class fare at the end game? Well, I'll tell you, it's a speedster. It is a speed farming character. It's pretty good at handling enemies in the Delves. Maybe not 100% great at handling bosses, although it can still do that decently. You're not going to end up fighting Leviathans as this guy, though. Most of all, it's about the speed, because it's consistently fast, because your ultimate ability and so on and so forth. Like, I mean, even look at this already, and this is without anything proccing, and the fact that I probably don't even have maxed out gear. Yeah, I only have a C1 gun. I had a C3 gun once upon a time. I must have accidentally loot collected it and not realized it. But anyways, let's get into it. So the subclass ability, you're probably going to end up taking the Lunar Lancer, just because obviously, you know, you end up triggering lunacy, you end up getting bigger, and you end up getting a lot more movement speed. And then otherwise, focusing on the gear itself, you're going to be doing attack speed, movement speed. I have crit damage on this. Attack speed, movement speed is the primary stats you're going to be focusing on. And then in the odd chance that you want to deal more damage rather than movement speed, although why would you? You would swap movement speed over into crit damage. But again, why would you ever want to end up doing that? And then for the Crystal Ring Hidden Effect, so there's 3 different abilities. We're going to go through these together. So there's Oh My Dinos. So your Dino Buddy now spawns 2 minions instead of 1, which is pretty irrelevant because frankly speaking, there is a limited amount of minions that you can have, and those minions kind of suck. Mr. Chomp Chomp, so the Dino Mount now spawns a T-Rex minion whenever you end up triggering your ult, which that one's actually really good because that T-Rex does a pretty decent amount of damage. And then there's Deep Wounds, applies a damage increase debuff to enemies dealt damage by Dino Tamer and their Dino summons. The explanation for this is crazy. You know what? Yeah, that would probably be the best one to go for, though, because it basically is going to end up making enemies take more damage from you. Okay? Was that so hard? And ultimately, obviously, is going to end up being your best bet. That said, I personally would take the T-Rex minion just because it's so freaking cool. I don't care. And then the banner, you know, you're obviously going to be going for probably the Nitro banner just because more Nitro is a good thing. Otherwise, the best banners for light value, which light value is the armor penetration stat for the end game. You need as much light as possible, is going to end up being the Leviathan torches. So there's the daily torch, the weekly torch, which is a combination of the daily torches. And then very rarely you can end up gain a permatorch, which is the permanent torch. It literally does not despawn, that you can forge into a really good physical one. For your ally, you got a couple options here. Not too many, but a couple. It's a magic damage character, so you can end up using Aviar if you want the movement speed, Puck if you want to be able to use your ult more often. It depends, right? Because on one hand, the movement speed is going to end up being nice because you're already super duper fast, but you might have to use the cooldown reduction ally if you need to. Otherwise, you can use Raptor Berserker. And then there is also going to end up being, or not Raptor Berserker, I'm an idiot, sorry. Chronomatic, that's going to be the cooldown ally if you don't have the Delves ally. And then there's also going to end up being the Prefect Penguin, again, if you don't have the Delves ally. So just keeping that in mind. Food doesn't matter, just pick any food that gives you most light. And then for the emblems, you got a couple options here. Most likely you're going to be taking Chromatic, just because, again, it's about casting your ult. Sometimes the ult will glitch out and he won't transform and get stuck forever. And sometimes you might accidentally despawn your mount or whatever. And so you need to always have the chromatic there as a way to compensate for issues, because Trove is a functioning video game. And then Arcane Emblem, obviously, you know, that's going to be used primarily for damage. If you can sacrifice that, you might go for Trailblazing with Chromatic. kind of up to you though. Unyielding is good for survivability, and Sure Strike is used if you don't have the good crit hit. You need to try and get as high crit hit as possible in order to end up just dealing consistent damage. And then for your Flask, I always just recommend Death Defying. It's just the easiest, you know, generally speaking. There's no complaints with it. Vial of Unleashed Power maybe would work. Not really, but you could kind of use it just because you're spamming your ult all the time, but generally, nah, not really. Conjurer's Crucible is a nice alternative. You can kind of just pick and choose, mess with whatever you want, frankly speaking, but Death Defying is going to end up being the primary one. Now, before we end up talking about our gem stats, and so on and so forth, we're going to end up mentioning very briefly the stats themselves that you're going to be focusing on from mid to end game. You know, the absolute minimum stats that you want to get for the mid point of the game before you start increasing those stat values for the end game. So your magic damage, you want to have at least 80,000 at your base level. So anything higher than that is obviously going to be very, very nice. And obviously there is going to end up being damage modifiers and bonuses based on mastery and whatever else, right? And then crit hit, you want to have that 50% at the minimum. You're trying to aim for like 70 to 80% because of Sure Strike. And then crit damage is going to be 800% and up. Those are just the base level values. Obviously, it's not going to end up turning any heads if you have those stats. Now, as far as the gems are concerned, let's talk about the class gem very briefly. So, increases the duration of the ultimate's ability, Summon Dino Mount, increases the attack speed of the ultimate ability, the Acid Spit Projectile. This is mandatory. You need to get this class gem ability. Class gems, sorry, are the easiest crystal gems to get in the game. Not implying that they're easy, but they are the easiest. So you definitely want to try and aim for that if you can. And then otherwise, we're going to talk about all these arrow gems, but I am actually going to swap to my Shadow Hunter right now because it's the only set of crystal gems that I have. Keep in mind, these are all physical gems. You would just swap the physical damage for magic damage, okay? So for the Cosmic Empowered Gem, Berserk Battler is really, really nice just because that's going to give you that extra oomph of damage that you need, because Berserk Battler gives you a lot of not only attack speed, but a lot of light. So that's kind of the main damage empowered Cosmic Gem that you're going to be going for. However, if you want to have more survivability and focus more so on speed, Vampirium is going to end up being a better option because you're going to end up having some crazy life leech with that gem, but more specifically, it will give you movement speed, which is nice. And then if we end up looking at the stat values on these gems, what you're aiming for is 3 pearls light, no pearls, magic damage, and crit damage. This is kind of the priority, is trying to get 3 pearls on light. It's very difficult to do when you're at the mid game and going up, but you need to have more light value to end up penetrating through the armor of the enemies so that you ultimately are dealing more damage this way. Like, it's mandatory for the end game. I would suggest that you augment and work on your Cosmic Gems as your priority over the other gems because the light value is that important. Not to say you should ignore the other gems, just the Cosmic Gems are kind of the quickest ones that you should level up because you can swap them to another character and then they'll do decent damage if they have a decent amount of light. Now, for the empowered colored gems, Pyrodisc is a must just because that sheer amount of movement speed you're going to get from it. Cubic Curtain will give you survivability, and anything else is just superfluous, doesn't really matter. Volatile Velocity does end up giving you 40% more ranged attack. Just range, sorry, not ranged attack. That implies that it gives more damage. But otherwise, Explosive Epilogue is probably going to end up being your best bet for any ranged character, frankly speaking. I just have Pyrodisc and Volatile Velocity because the extra aiming of this, but ultimately, if I had any other gem that I could swap out, like if I could swap out Pyrodisc on my Shadow Hunter, it'd be Explosive Epilogue. So as far as the stats are concerned, for all of your empowered gems, including your class gem, not the Cosmic Gem, you're going to end up getting 2 pearls magic damage, 1 pearl crit damage, and no pearls in crit hit. If you at any point ever have over 100% crit hit, you can start cycling some of those stat values into max health, but generally speaking, it's not going to happen. Then for your lesser gems, the easiest way that I can explain this to you is a 3:3 ratio. So 3 of these gems are going to end up being the exact same as your empowered gems. They're going to be the 2 pearls magic damage, 1 pearl crit damage and no pearls crit hit. And then the other 3, because there's a total of 6 lesser gems here with primary colors anyways, The other 3 are going to end up being as follows: 2 pearls crit damage, 1 pearl magic damage, no pearl crit hit. If any of the pearls kind of find their way to different slots, whether it be crit damage or physical damage, crit damage or magic damage, sorry, it doesn't really matter. The damage increase is going to be quite minuscule. The point is that you want to try and find a nice balance between them so that not one of your crit damage or magic damage is pulling too far in one direction. So you can kind of just experiment and swap the stats around and stuff like that. But it really doesn't matter that much, because once you start getting to these high enough values, you're going to kill everything anyway. And anyways, yeah, that's going to do it for the Dino Tamer. Thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. If there was anything that I was missing, you can, of course, leave it down in the comments below. And then otherwise, I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want to support the channel. Bye, guys.